and I didn't stop. I tried to, like, I didn't make it clear enough to her. And so we're live, by the way. Hi, everybody. Yeah, she suggested a title. I propose, your title. She passed along your title. I proposed the alternate title that I would be giving it. Um, and, and, and somehow your title slipped through. So I just need to apologize to everybody that this very academic sounding title is your fault, Pamela.
Yes, I'm generally not allowed to name things
Yeah.
because I'm bad at it.
So
Taglines I'm good. Taglines I'm good at.
yeah, code. But yeah, no, The problem is that you're too artistic. And I forget which brain is the one. One of us is analytical and one of us is artistic, and I'm the
Yeah.
analytical one. You're the artistic one. It's funny,
Yeah, it's
even though you're
true.
the scientist
It's
and I'm the
true.
writer.
What is our episode number?
This is 569.
Okay.
Say hello to me, people in the chat, and I will say hello back. I know I forgot on the weekly Space Hangout. I apologize. I was just too excited for the show that we were going to do. So I forgot to say hello to everybody.
What were you doing?
We had Pascal Lee on the show, who's like one of the
Oh,
most. He's one of the directors of the Hot and Mars project. So he's the one who helps teach people to live on Mars every year up in the
okay.
Canadian Arctic, and has been
Yeah.
planning out humans to Mars missions for literally decades at this point. And I don't know, we just sort of moved into talking about that and other things. And I was talking to Morgan. It was Morgan's birthday, and I just completely gapped on saying hi to everybody. So I will make up for that. Hello to Ant, Adam Synergy, Annie Cowley, Astro YYZ, Beth Johnson, Bort Klankar, Christopher Senti, Colin Jones, Zesty Reichwin, Eric Schneider, Fleming Thunberg, Gordon Dewis, Guido Bibra, John Seffield, Jorn Albert, Kylie Cerna, Larry Beckham, Magnus Thymer Jensen, Marie Coberts, Nancy Graziano, Rich Wilson, Arjone, Sick James, Tesla Ranger, Thomas Traniker, and Zapfan. Hey, everybody. Oh, man. And good news, we have a new episode for The Guide to Space in the works. So
Excellent.
yeah, we did an episode on this cool observation from Spitzer of the 150 million black hole or solar mass black hole that's orbiting around a 18 billion mass black hole. I'm sure you saw it.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
sure you've seen the story.
The this is how you get black holes that are bigger and bigger and bigger.
And also just how they were able to calculate the orbits and
Yeah.
predict when the one black hole splashes through the accretion disk of the other black hole. And I mean, this story had everything for me, which was a prediction by Stephen Hawking about what the surface of a black hole should be like and the kinds of gravitational waves that should emanate. It had an observation that was made by that couldn't be made from Earth, because the sun, when the next pass through was going to happen, the sun was going to be right in the middle of the field of view, and so they had to use Spitzer. And Spitzer, of course, at this point, when it was able to make those observations, was just 4 months away from its final
Yeah.
shutdown, and so it just
So it was really like one of those Fast and Furious movies
yeah.
in slow motion with telescopes.
Yeah. So they had to like, well, who can take this picture? We need somebody
Yes.
who can take this picture. And like, Spitzer. Yeah, but Spitzer, isn't it almost dead? It's got gas in the tank for one last mission. Yeah, I loved it. It was like, like this veteran telescope going on one final mission to save the day. And so anyway, I love the story. Are you ready? You were just like doing a lot of busy
I
work over there. What's going on?
I have two monitors set up.
Mm-hmm.
One that is right next to me and really easy to see. And that's the one where I have you and I have my auto recording and I have my notes and I have a second screen that's like way far away on the other side of my studio desk. Now the issue is that the window that had the Patreon sponsors on it was like way over there. And so, hi, and I have a very demanding Australian Shepherd. And so there was much tilting and turning and trying to see my mouse. You need to go away.
Yeah,
Hi,
this is
Malachi.
not going to be productive with this dog all up in your
No.
jam here. You're not going to get anything done.
This is he never got up until this week, and he suddenly realized, wait, humans won't beat me. And so I'm trying to walk a fine line between dude, space, and I don't want the dog to think I will beat him.
Yeah, no,
So
this is a losing battle. Can't win, don't try.
yeah,
Just know your role.
it's true. It's also very cold, so if he would just lay on my feet would be thrilled, but I don't think he's going to do that.
Is it cold there? Man, we're going to be hitting 26 on Sunday. It's so warm.
So we're in that time of year where the weather here can't decide Chicago or Dallas.
Right.
And so currently the jet stream is either right over us or south of us. And this means that we have the colder temperatures. We have a frost warning tonight, which has me really sad because I already planted some of my plants.
I put all mine out, but our rule in Canada is in British Columbia is we wait till the May long weekend, which is like the third weekend in May before you actually will put out your tomatoes and the stuff that'll be killed in a frost.
Right. So none of that has gone out. The only thing that has gone out so far is my green beans, peas, and Brussels sprouts,
right,
which admittedly are the things that many people are hoping will die. But I have some small greenhouses that I'm going to go set up this afternoon. They're just like the plastic on a frame ones that I can put on our raised beds. Yeah.
Right on. Okay, but yeah, no, we put all our fuchsias outside, so they're on their own. So all our fuchsias overwintered, and then they've just all gone outside, and now they have to tough it out.
Yep. Yeah, the strawberries are like that, but the strawberries want to be outside.
You bring your strawberries inside?
No. I had brand new strawberries that needed planted.
Yeah, okay.
So they arrived and they went out.
Okay, yeah, no, our strawberries have to tough it out every winter, all outside.
Oh, these will in the future, but past generations of strawberries met with there were issues.
They get old. They get tired.
And they also have groundhogs and moles here.
Yeah, we don't have that problem.
So I built a raised bed with chicken wire underneath it.
Oh, that's very clever.
It's years of struggle.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you're not taking it. Don't you think 3 dogs should really be able to keep that under control?
The problem is the moles are underground. And so our backyard has literally dozens of holes that are 1 dog paw's width wide that all terminate in mole tunnels where Stella has heard the moles and rapid fire dug. She's never caught one,
right?
But she's like traced out where all their tunnels are in the backyard.
That is awesome. All right. When last we saw our heroes, they were going to record an episode of Astronomy Cast. We've got 1 episode today, and then we will stick around for your questions about space and or astronomy. They don't have to be about the topic at hand. Just to let you know, like if you
they can be about anything.
Anything. Yeah.
We can mourn comets together.
Oh, comet! Are we talking about Comet Atlas or the new?
No, Swan is starting to have issues.
Oh no, that's our. No, anyway, okay. Well, we'll mourn that comet later on. Okay, please let me know when you are ready.
I have pressed record, and it is recording.
I've also pressed record. All right. Let me get my intro. Here we go. Astronomy Cast, episode 569, The Ethics of Commercial and Military Space, Part 1, Private Spaceflight. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain, publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
Great. Once again, the weather's just getting better and better. The apocalypse has never looked so lovely. My garden is getting out of control. It's achieved sentience. It is now in control, and is we've got to cut it back. There's just too many plants, too much grass, too much weeds. Yeah, I got many weeks ahead of me at this point out in the garden.
The day of the Triffids is trying to be upon you.
Yeah, exactly. Every year, more and more people are making their way to space. Some private citizens have already gotten their astronaut wings, paying for a trip to space out of their own pocket. What are the ethical implications of this as the costs of spaceflight come down? So we've got a new series. We're going to do like at least a 2-part series, maybe at most a 2-part series. But this week we're going to talk about private spaceflight and just what are the ethical issues with this. Next week, we will talk about military spaceflight. We're going to talk about Space Force. Although I think if we got our timing a little better, we could do the episode after Space Force comes out, the new TV show.
Yeah,
which comes out.
we can pull that off.
Yeah, can we? May 31st.
So let's talk about today. We will talk about space tourism, the new movie that is planned.
Yeah.
Next week, we'll look at the trade-off between commercial space and scientific exploration from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So issues like the Iridium satellites and otherwise abuse of space resources for economic purposes. And then we'll go to Space Force.
Now, we've done 2 episodes about space tourism, 214 and 451. So we don't want to cover too much of that ground. But I think that the thing that I found very interesting was just, the way you had proposed it, which is like, let's deal with the commercial and the ethics of this situation, and we'll sort of see where that gets us. So, what in your mind are some of the, I guess first let's just talk about like, how do you define private space flight?
When the purpose is the economic benefits of the parent company and its shareholders over the advancement of science and exploration causes that benefit mankind rather than stakeholders.
And I mean, like, one version of that could very well be space tourism, that you've got a space tourism company that is sending people on flights and they're having fun and going to the 0G hotel and enjoying themselves, or flying to the moon and prancing about on the moon in that low gravity. But that is really just a subset of what private spaceflight could look like. So when you sort of think about that larger umbrella, what are some other examples of the kinds of missions that would be run privately?
Well, this is where we start looking at, and this is what triggered this for me, sending people to space to film adventure movies rather than to do the normal peacekeeping, educational, and scientific endeavors that take place on the space station. Even space tourists up until now have pretty much been tasked with, we're going to train you like an astronaut, you're going to do education stuff while you're up there too, and hey, we may throw you a bone and give you a little bit of science to do.
Right.
But right now, Tom Cruise is looking to partner with SpaceX to partner with NASA. And this has been tweeted out by NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine.
Yeah.
They're going to film a not Mission Impossible, but certainly an impossible mission on the International Space Station.
How awful and difficult that process is going to be. I mean, I know that I think I had a chance to interview someone who took the IMAX, like these 70 millimeter IMAX cameras up onto the space station and tried to make a documentary. They gave the astronauts, they taught them how to use these cameras, and then they had to fly up with these cameras and try to shoot what they were doing while they were up there, and then send the footage back down. Or it was on the space shuttle. Anyway, it was tough because it's a great big bulky professional camera that shoots an enormous amount of film at this huge aspect ratio, and it's a real challenge. And so same thing, right? Do you send does he do his own shooting? Do you send up another person who handles camera, sound, hair, makeup, right? Do the astronauts get involved? So, like, just the details of this are blowing my mind. But I think when we look at just all of human existence today, and we think about all of the trips that human beings take, the vast majority of them are private, right? When you fly
Right.
in an airplane, 99.999% of the airplane flights are for private purposes. You are on a trip. You are carrying cargo. You are doing this, and then every now and then someone flies an airplane into a hurricane, or take some aerial footage of a drought, and that's the scientific purpose. But the vast majority, and so why wouldn't it be that into the future?
This is where it starts to become a how do the numbers work out and what is the ethics of this kind of question. And the frame of reference that I'm using for this is when I was a graduate student at McDonald Observatory, we'd periodically get VIPs coming through the telescope. And no matter what we were observing for science at that moment, we had to kind of put it on the back burner. And yeah, we'd bang the keys that we needed to keep things more or less going in a timely fashion.
Right.
Um, but we had to pay attention to these guests who might be funders, who
Right.
might potentially help keep our science going one more year with the money they might give to the observatory. And this okay, we are a not-for-profit enterprise. We exist thanks to the generosity of our donors, thanks to our competitiveness in peer-reviewed science funding opportunities, and thanks to our benefactors in the state government who give us line item budgets. We know that we exist by the grace of all of these different humans, and so we have to dance like the dancing monkey when they appear to keep them happy. That is part of the job that we are all aware of. And astronauts are fully aware that that is also part of their job. They
Mm-hmm.
are all given massive amounts of media training. They're given massive amounts of here are effective ways to communicate complex ideas, how to work a crowd, how to be this STEM educator, even though they may be by training a pilot, an engineer, a doctor, a myriad of other different things, a geophysicist, but they're all trained to be educators in their role of astronauts. And when they're on the International Space Station, they know part of their job is going to be on video cons with Girl Scouts
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to judge science fair from outer space, to do all these different feel good tasks that remind everyone, hey, we have astronauts, so that the funding keeps flowing.
Right.
We know that's part of the job. But that's a few moments, a few hours out of your day. And what we're looking at here is filming a movie in outer space. We don't know how long Tom Cruise and whoever else might be on the International Space Station. But what we do know is while they're up there, they're it's a 24-hour gig in a large way. And so now, instead of being there as STEM professionals, benefiting mankind, inspiring, engaging, educating, their crew on a movie that the movie's primary goal is to have a great storyline and earn a whole lot of profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so where is the ethics in having our astronauts, instead of engaging people in ways that will educate them about space, having them work crew on a film?
Right, right. And I mean, that is just the beginning. That's the tip of the
Right.
ethical iceberg. We have to sort of think about the risks involved with it's one thing to, for a test pilot, professional astronaut who has been taking risks all their life, who is going to space for the betterment of all humankind to
Right.
make incredible discoveries that will push our STEM and science and technology all ahead. And it's another thing for somebody to for them to take those risks, as you say, so that they can act as crew on a movie, or for them to babysit some property magnate who is vomiting in
Yeah.
their spacesuit. Of course, the other quite public issue was this private space flight that was purchased by a Japanese businessman to fly around the moon on a SpaceX capsule. Now, I'm not sure how far that mission has stalled, or if it will.
It's still
It's
scheduled.
still scheduled, yeah, but who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, again, we live in Musk time.
Starship, we don't know what its
Who
schedule
knows? Yeah,
is.
whether it'll be on a Starship, whether it'll be on a Falcon Heavy, who knows whether it's going to fly? Are they going to be
Yeah.
able to have a capsule that's capable of doing it? It does. You can sort of see some benefit, like SpaceX will need to make their Crew Dragon capsule capable of handling someone for a week and a half on a long duration mission, maybe. So
Yeah.
you can sort of imagine some benefits, and so you get some willing test subject to take that flight. But essentially, you are looking at this bifurcation of funding into something that is a distraction from the main purpose, and yet it is inevitable. As I said, airlines, it's completely flipped around the other way. NASA wants to fly some astronauts out to Hawaii for a test mission. They hop on a commercial flight and they fly out to Hawaii, right? They don't.
And this is where context, ethics aren't black and white. There's a whole lot of gray where context determines the right or wrong of a situation. Grabbing someone, squeezing them as hard as you can, and hitting them in the back as hard as you can is generally considered to be something you shouldn't do. But if someone's choking on an almond, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And so that's an extreme example. But when I look at SpaceX saying we as a private corporation are going to fund from our private coffers, it's now muddier because SpaceX now has Artemis as part of its timeline with Starship. When they say we're going to fund out of our private coffers this amazing art project to send under the leadership of this one artist who's already well known, a group of people on a journey around the moon as proof of concept for our mission, everyone kind of goes, are you going to kill them? Please don't kill them. Okay, that at least we're all acknowledging it. But when a private corporation does that, it kind of falls into the same category as when Red Bull has someone jump from a huge altitude and parachute. It's the same thing as when a movie does special effects that risk the lives of everyone on the set for the sake of getting a good scene. These are private endeavors that have private insurance, and we're not risking the taxpayers' dollars the same way.
Right.
But I know Harvard University a number of years ago decided they weren't going to allow their campus be used to shoot movies any longer, because it was too much of a distraction to the education of the students. And with spacecraft, it's not just the distractions that you have at issue. It also is when something goes terribly sideways, that something tends to be looked at poorly. We have seen this happen with Boeing with their 737 MAX. The entire Boeing fleet has seen decreases in orders prior to COVID coming in, and post-COVID, nothing counts any longer. And that is simply due to the risk assessment now tied to Boeing. Well, Boeing had that go sideways. What else is going to break? With the space shuttle program, NASA made the decision not to allow space tourists on the space shuttle.
Right.
Full stop.
Yeah.
And part of that was informed by just how hard it was for everyone to recover from the loss of Krista McAuliffe.
Yeah, because that was a private, I guess that was a teacher who
was not trained as an astronaut. There have since then been astronauts who were formerly teachers. She was a teacher who was kind of trained as an astronaut.
Right. I mean,
astronaut.
Back in the Apollo era, all of the astronauts were test pilots, and then as they moved into the space shuttle era, then they would have the mission specialists who they didn't necessarily have the same kind of test pilot capability. Not every one of them
Yeah.
could pilot an F-15, but they do have other specializations. And as you said, some do include teacher, but a lot of them, they mostly include PhD in about 5 different things, as well as engineer.
It's true.
But they are, and so that is still a professional. That is still someone who is
Yes.
they have made the career change from whatever it was they were doing before to professional astronaut, with all of the risks that implies, and the understanding of that, and all of the all of those requirements. And so
Hmm.
now we're moving to, and again, this has already happened. I mean, there have been a half dozen people who have already flown to space, paid their $20 million, flown to the International Space Station, floated around. Some people that I really respect as well.
Yeah.
So,
And there was one vague plan to film a music video in space. Lance Bass tried really
right.
hard. He completed at the age of 23 all of the US and Russian certifications to be an astronaut. Tourist, not a full-on astronaut, but a tourist astronaut. He just couldn't raise the final tens of millions of dollars to make it into space
Yeah,
to do his reality bit.
yeah. So I mean, we're looking at the risks. Do you see this, though, as sort of the beginning of an inevitable conversion from a very much a public scientific endeavor to some kind of public-private sort of crossing, where, I mean, it happens in so many other fields? You sort of see this privatization of the International Space Station, privatization of parts of NASA. Is this where we're going?
I don't know. And I'm really torn on this part. There is a long history of various movies negotiating to film on Air Force, not Air Force, on Navy airplane carriers. There have been bases opened up for filming. And in every case, there's been a very careful accounting of what is necessary to keep everyone safe and to make sure that the military doesn't lose funding in the process. You're going to pay your own costs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that combination of long term, this has been happening since the earliest days of Hollywood, gearing up towards today, they know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Space is a slightly different category, but we don't know how different. We're at a weird transitionary point.
But I mean, it's not just. I mean, you're really fixated on movies,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, they have portions. They've got a new segment they're adding to the International Space Station that's probably going to be a commercial operation, that you can rent out space on that module and use it for commercial operations. There are racks that are attached on the exterior of the space station that people can go and get their experiments installed onto the International Space Station. So you can just pay, and you can imagine that you send up your specialist. Your specialist goes up, you work for some company, you're doing
Yeah.
protein folding, you send one of your biologists up to the International Space Station to watch over the experiment while you carry out your protein folding, and then the person comes back down. And same thing, not a trained astronaut, not a career astronaut, but they need to be there to watch these proteins fold in whatever way is necessary. And again, as if the space station needs more money, more and more of it gets converted over to these commercial aspects.
And this is where the budgeting of how to do it really matters. NASA and Roscosmos and JAXA and all the partners in the International Space Station have put a lot of effort into figuring out, okay, so what does it actually cost to have our scientists on the ISS, by which I mean the astronauts trained as scientists and engineers, run the experiments and have this as a commercial R&D platform. And they've figured that out so that they can do the commercial R&D without craziness occurring. Now, so far, the choice has always been, let's train the astronauts who are actual astronauts to run those experiments, unless there happens to be a space tourist that we're just going to decide we trust.
Hmm.
And they've paid amounts of money. Companies so far have decided that they don't really like the risk assessment of sending their own people into space just to run a rack of labs. And so training astronauts is something that is just how it's been done. And here, I think it falls into the category of this is what astronauts are trained to do. This is what they have chosen to risk their life about. They're trying to figure out what research and development can space be used for. Where it again gets trickier is when you're asking them to risk their lives for something that doesn't fall into that research and development and STEM category. And I don't know all the answers
Hmm.
here. I'm
Hmm.
just going to flat out say I don't know all the answers. I simply know where we need to start looking for the questions. We need to start looking at what actually fits in somebody's job description.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, if we just assume that space flight will continue on the growth curve that it already has, that prices will come down,
Mm-hmm.
that more and more people will go into space, as the prices come down, what gets done in space will change, as now different businesses are actually accessible to, can use space and can afford various things in space, then it's going to be more and more. And so it will eventually look like, 200 years from now, space flight will be as regular as airline travel is today. And 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 we don't have these ethical questions anymore. But what is airline flights that are done for space, and what are airline flights that are done for commercial purposes? And somehow we will get there from here. It's
It's
just we will
this,
have to face each one of these ethical challenges like they did with air travel in the first place.
and at a certain point, it also comes down to this is going to sound terrible, but it comes down to how do you figure out the pricing of things? Because if we do the accounting and realize that all these folks at NASA who otherwise would have been spending their time dedicated to reviewing grant proposals, to making sure that the pace of science continues on, that our missions continue on, going up on the hill, fighting for funding for this mission or that with Congress. All of these people have full time jobs that are at the administrative level, so they don't have to necessarily account for their hours on this program or that. If these humans are instead spending all of their time on the phone to Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
that can get lost in the accounting, but it has an effect that reverberates throughout the entirety of NASA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when our communications people start being asked to start showcasing this commercial private partnership with a space company that is getting funded through NASA, that's like, okay, so you're not sharing science, you're promoting SpaceX with your announcement of the Artemis mission. Well, that still is advancing the Artemis mission. When Andy Weir's The Martian book came out and when the movie came out, there was a lot of NASA engagement in the movie, making sure the movie was done right. And this included training folks like me what the NASA messaging was.
Yes.
And here I start to have trouble with shit. I have to budget the time I spent getting that training against my grant to do citizen science. So essentially, that movie, which I adore,
Mm-hmm.
was a tax on my grant funding because I had to sit through training on how to communicate the right taglines.
Right. Um, and when you think about, say, the overall cost of the International Space Station to the
Right.
American taxpayer, well, to the international taxpayer, there's some, we bought some arms for that place, that, let's say it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. How do you justify a $20 million flight to the International Space Station when, the true costs involved are far greater on a per person basis? It's not, you can't make your money back. And
Right.
it's sort of that, again, it's that same idea about, do you rent out an hour of time on the flight deck of one of the United States' supercarriers, like what do those cost per hour,
Yeah.
right?
Those, they know what they
Well,
cost
maybe
per
they do,
hour
but
at least.
but do they? I mean, if they have to clear off
Yeah,
the
you
flight
can
deck
actually.
and have a bunch of Top Gun, scenes filmed with people walking around on the flight deck, are they paying the tens of millions of dollars per hour to cost to keep that flight deck clear? Maybe they are. Maybe that's what you're saying. So it's a very challenging, as we make this shift. And this is, I mean, this is
Yeah.
a conversation. It's called privatization.
Yeah.
It has been argued about, wrestled with. It is a challenging ethical issue every single time it happens. How do you turn a public institution into a private institution?
Yeah.
Should you? What is the damage to the public institutions in the long term? And yet, in many cases, technology moves ever forward, and these things are inevitable.
And this is where being at a turning point makes everything more difficult. When the movie Top Gun came out, when we were, I think, late elementary school, middle school, a million years ago, same actor involved. When the movie Top Gun came out, the Navy saw a recruitment increase with a decrease in their own having to do promotion like nothing they could ever have imagined, but has continued on. So that movie turned out to be one heck of an amazing recruiting tool. So the question is, what is the gamble that NASA is now making with allowing
Yeah.
Bigelow to have advertisements, to allow Tom Cruise to film a new movie, to allow commercial engagements where the company is sure making out.
Yeah.
But what is the return? What is the return
Mm-hmm.
on investment of time for NASA?
And I think that you and a lot of your STEM colleagues feel this sad nervousness at the lack of interest in STEM and going into these fields. And so, isn't that inspiring? Aren't these kinds of activities inspiring for the next generation of scientists and engineers and technology people? So, we have no answers today. We just have a series of ethical dilemmas that we will just keep throwing at you until your head explodes. Pamela.
But now you know.
Now
you know.
Now you know. And I think we will continue this conversation in other directions next week. Pamela, do you have some names for us this week?
I do. As always, we here at Astronomy Cast are here only because of you guys. You let us pay our staff a fair wage to produce all of our episodes and keep things going behind the scenes. And I can't tell you how grateful we are that you do this so that we don't have to do all of that. We love our humans. Thank you. And this week, we would like to give a special thanks to Matthew Horstman, Jessica Feltz, Dustin Roth, Marco Arasi, Brian Kilby, J. Alexanderson, Brian Letts, Michelle Cullen, Mark Grundy, Joe Wilkinson, Jeremy Kerwin, Tim Garish, William Lauer, Mark Stephen Raznak, Jack, Omar Del Riviero, and Neuter Dude.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you, Pamela. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. All right. Now we're just saving. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you, Google. Google just told me that it hopes I have a good day too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of endearing.
Yeah. Even though I was thanking you, but it's not.
You didn't know that.
Not everything's about you, Google. Okay.
There. All right.
Okay. We are safe, but for how long?
Yay.
All right, we got a pile of questions. People took it seriously this time around.
Good.
And so Hal McKinney wants to know who's going to play the two of us when the Astronomy Cast movie is produced.
So there was
age,
a period of time when I was much younger and thus also thinner, because unlike Fraser, I don't reduce in size with age, apparently. When Google image search would confuse me and Natalie Portman. So I'm going to
Mm.
say, can I have that confusion occur again?
Yeah, same thing. It sucks when you sort of have more hair in the beginning and less hair in the end, and so you know who you decide is going to play you. But obviously, everybody says that I look like the guy from This Is Us. There's like a character in a TV show that everyone
I
thinks that I
haven't
look
watched that
exactly
yet.
the same as the guy in Stranger Things who got killed in like the first
Oh,
episode.
I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently him, obviously, it's clear. I forget his name. Um, Astro YYZ asks, are there regulations in place that worldwide countries need to adhere to regarding private space flights, or is the human analog to Starlink satellites? I mean, the Outer
So
Space
we're going
Treaty?
so there is an outer space treaty, and there are regulations that are vaguely maintained through the UN on use of various wavelengths for communications. The goal is to protect certain wavelengths
Right.
for other purposes, including science. Now, as we've seen with the Iridium original satellite constellation, once something's in space, it can do whatever the F it pleases, and it will. Yes. So these are problems that we deal with.
Um, Arjone asks, how do you think that a successful Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic business will change how space is viewed?
It depends on their accident record.
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern is in early airplane flights. Heck, even when I was a little kid, there'd be a crash of like a full on jetliner once a year.
Hmm.
When I was in elementary school, I remember my family driving into Boston Logan so that I could fly out to my grandparents in Albuquerque. And as we're getting ready to go into the Charles Tunnel, on the other side of the highway, they were coming out with flatbed trucks of airplane pieces from a plane that went off and into the harbor.
Hmm.
One, I am now permanently afraid of landing and taking off over oceans. Um, but our sensitivity to the loss of human life has changed.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed as much in some cases. I'm looking at you, Georgia. Uh, but because of this, we we've seen things like grounding the entire 737 MAX fleet,
Right.
the grounding of the space shuttle after both the Challenger and Columbia accidents. I Virgin Galactic went a long time after their one human caused flight error
And
bef-
death.
and death before they flew again.
Hmm.
And so I'm deeply concerned that all it would take is one crew mistake early on
Yeah.
in one of these missions.
Yeah. I mean, one of those starships splatting into the moon filled with
Yeah,
200 space tourists
right.
would be a bad day. And you can
And it could
imagine.
even be something more subtle. Like imagine getting there and not being able to take off again and not having anyone be able to rescue you in
Oh,
time.
yeah. And like watching
That
them
that
all
that would be even
suffocate.
worse
Yeah.
while also more subtle and
Yep. Yeah. When you think about that, um, you think about the script that the president had prepared to read if there was a failure and they were stuck on the, if their engine had failed, they weren't able to get off the planet. And
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of terrifying to think about that, and yet it's inevitable, right? But Zapvan
And
Zapvan is saying in the chat, people die on Everest every year. People still go. So there will
and this
be.
is where we are honestly numb to the stupidity of rich people climbing a mountain because they think they can and dying there.
I
And
think
it's easy to get numb to that. I think it would be harder to get numb to the burst of death associated with a crash.
I think it's that same issue where people are willing to be pilots of small airplanes, and they feel very
Yeah.
comfortable and safe, and yet actually it's very dangerous. Like air travel is very safe for everything except for small airplane. If you're going to be a Cessna pilot, your chances of dying are quite high.
Look at Harrison Ford. He's a really good pilot and has nonetheless had multiple accidents.
Yeah, yeah. And so all pilots have these stories. And because we do a bad job of assessing our risk. And in fact, there was a really great article that I had read today about COVID that essentially the government of the United States, not so much the government of other countries, but the government of the United States has pushed risk assessment back into the brains of its citizens and said, you figure out what risks you're comfortable with. But we know that human beings are the worst risk assessment machines there are, right? We're terrible at this. And so when an invisible enemy can hit you from anywhere, that everything could be infected, that you don't understand which are the things that are very safe for you to do and which are the things that are incredibly risky for you to do. And it's a really thing. Humans should not be allowed to judge risks, right? And be
And this
responsible
is
for the outcomes unless you've done it scientifically.
and this is particularly frustrating because as the New York Times was able to find out through Freedom of Information Act release of documents, the Centers for Disease Control had put out a detailed plan for White House approval on what it would take to open up various segments of our nation. And they had essentially removed the human factor by simply saying, okay, when you can check these boxes
Right. Yeah.
by
Yeah.
having
Follow the
these
system.
follow the system.
Yeah.
Here, let's give you a checklist.
Yeah.
And it was deemed far too prescriptive, where the choice was made to trust humans over checklists to decide what was safe. And as someone who has jumped horses in my life, don't trust us. We'll make
Yeah.
stupid choices.
Yeah. And that's what, I mean, pilots are the best for this, right?
Yeah.
Pilots have learned. There's a wonderful book that I read. Oh, I forget the name, but it's essentially just an ode to checklists. It's a book all about
Yes.
how wonderful checklists are. And as a fairly naturally disorganized person, I, have embraced checklists as much as I can in my life, because it is the thing that I do to keep me from going off the rails.
Well, there is
Follow
this
the system.
there was this fabulous research a number of years ago where I don't remember exactly who it was. I want to say that it was a surgical nurse PhD candidate or something like that. Someone who was doing research on how to reduce surgical accidents, leaving sponges in people, things like that. And checklist was the
Yep.
result. And a whole lot of surgeons initially pushed back because they felt that it was beneath them
Yeah.
to have to use checklists. It's sort of like the nerdy kid saying, oh, I don't need to have a homework notebook. I'll remember it all on my own. No, you won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you won't.
And pilots learned to embrace this a long time ago.
And surgeons have now too. Surgeons are
yeah,
good
well,
about it now.
yeah. And that's the book that I was talking about. It's called The Checklist. That's right. The book is called The Checklist Manifesto.
Uh-huh.
And I do highly, let me get the name of the author. It's Atul Gawande. And he's this really celebrated surgeon who tried to see if you could follow the success, because exactly right, that people were dying of infections and all kinds of really treatable issues, and by following these checklists they were able to drop infections and accidents and stuff by a significant amount. And it shows you even the most professional, most knowledgeable people still have to follow the system. And so anyway, we went down that rabbit hole. Checklists are the best. Arjun is also asking, could a starship be saved by another starship? Wouldn't there be a refueling ship in Earth orbit? So good question. Starship lands on the moon and it is unable to launch because it's out of fuel. It springs a fuel leak. Can another
So
starship refuel it?
so the issue that is as yet undetermined is how accurate can they land those suckers on something like the moon that has such a wonky surface in so many
Hmm.
places. So you would have to be able to have a landing ellipse that put the two spacecraft quite close together, close enough that you could easily offload people from one vehicle and onto the other. This would also mean the stupid elevator plan they have on Starliner. I'm just going to hate on
On
this
Starship?
elevator.
Oh, you mean
Yeah, Starship.
where you like come out the side of the Starship and
And then like repel down if it breaks.
right.
Yeah, yeah. The exit method of that spaceship, I just not sure how I feel about.
Yep.
Um so you'd have to be able to land close enough. Um if you could land close enough and you had a secondary vehicle ready to go.
Yeah.
So this starts to look a bit like what when we were doing the Hubble servicing mission of the space shuttle back 2017, 2015.
Well, 2011 was the last space shuttle.
Shit. Okay. Ignore me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But
back in the olden
after
days.
Columbia, but before the space shuttle was wrapped up, they needed to make sure that they could send another space shuttle up to rescue the
Yeah.
astronauts.
And so there are some amazing photos of having two different space shuttles geared up to launch in case they had to
Yeah.
launch. I believe Enterprise was the backup
Yeah.
for the mission that went up. Not Enterprise, the other one that began with an E.
Endeavor.
Endeavor.
Yeah.
Endeavor, I think, was the backup.
Michael Meyer is noting, and this is exactly right. Starships are designed to refuel in space. Doing on the surface would require extra hoses. I don't even think it would be possible, right? That they made up tail to
No, you
tail.
lose the one starship.
Yeah,
You
yeah, no,
rescue
yeah,
the
exactly.
humans.
Yeah, so we are losing a starship, right? Like
Yeah.
if you were out in orbit and one of your starships ran out of fuel, then you could theoretically dock another starship. They would dock tail to tail, transfer fuel, and then you've got more propellant to go. But if your starship is standing on its little hexa legs on the surface of the moon, there is no there's no way that you're going to be able to get that back. So that is a gone starship, and your
Yeah.
hope is, can you get all these people to get out on and rappel down the side of one starship and then climb up the other starship into its crew capsule and then come home. Yes. It's going to be a challenge, and and that's if we're lucky. That's if all it is that their starship breaks, not if
Yeah.
the thing goes splat.
I'm really hoping that they don't try and take that many people to another world all at once until they've already taken some sort of a habitat to hide in. So, first time you take one of these big old aircraft, not aircraft, spacecraft to the moon, first time you take it to Mars, prepare for the second ship and leave behind stuff. Create a base camp.
Yeah.
This is my hope. I don't think anyone's listening to me.
I
This is my hope.
I think you and I are in complete agreement. Like
Yeah.
the model for what the future of humanity looks like on the moon is Antarctica.
Yes.
Same thing for
Yes.
Mars. It's Antarctica. Same thing for Europa. It's Antarctica. Same thing for Venus. It's Antarctica, right? That's until space flight is a piece of cake. Like we're talking hundreds of years from now. Until then,
Mm-hmm.
the extent of the human presence on another world is going to be, just look at Antarctica, but with
We
less
can't live under the ocean yet.
but with less breathing.
Where's our SeaQuest under
Yeah.
ocean platform with the
Yeah.
dolphin that we get to play
I
with?
think
Until
that
we have
I
that,
think that exists. NASA has their they have an
but
undersea.
it's not a multi-generational
No.
science station. Like
No.
it's you
Yeah.
don't go there with your
Yeah.
teenage kid.
And there's plenty of water in the ocean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
no
yeah.
problem. No shortage of water to fuel your spaceship. Yeah, yeah, no. The moon is like Antarctica but without the breathing.
And fewer penguins.
Devin Sholdes asks, what about inspiring the next generation of astronauts? So this is sort of back to this, like, why do we do it? How much do you, how important is that to you, do you think, to inspire the
Well,
next generation of astronauts and even
there's
scientists?
there's so many ways to inspire us. If you can find it online somewhere, the early IMAX movies, um, on the space shuttle program, The Dream is Alive. Go find The Dream is Alive. Watching it in IMAX as a middle schooler, feeling my chest rumble, it was just like, oh my God, I want that to be me.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to inspire with truth and excellent filmmaking. And this is where we have inflicted IMAX cameras on so many astronauts. And there's good storytelling that can be done from the surface of our world. There's also a whole lot of bad that can be done. No one will let me watch the movie Gravity. I'm told that there's good reasons for that.
It's great. It's got a few it's got a few laws of physics breakdowns, but apart from that,
So my husband, who's had to listen to me rant at the television because Star Trek Enterprise did their unit conversions wrong, he won't let me watch it. So
I think you need to just secretly watch it. I give you permission. Now you're in a bit of a pickle. You have to decide.
But 2009: A Space Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
How many people dreamed of magnetic shoes on a journey to Mars or to the moon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We need that kind of storytelling.
So how do we get it, right? Like there is no question that there is a whole generation that is being incredibly enthusiastic about the future of spaceflight, thanks to what's happening with Elon Musk and SpaceX, right? However you feel about his personality, he is putting brains in space.
Yes.
And people are really enthusiastic about what the future holds. For the first time, like I have never in the 20
they're
years.
religiously enthused.
Yeah, in the 20, to the point that they're assholes about it. But in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I have never seen just a general groundswell of people that are so enthusiastic about humanity's future in space. And it is wonderful to see.
And I think it has a lot to do with SpaceX's storytelling.
To everything. Everything.
We do simulcasts of a lot of different things on our Twitch channel to just promote more voices, to throw out more content. And when we do simulcasts of launches, we often have a choice between the NASA feed and the SpaceX feed, and they are not the same. And the SpaceX feed consistently has more emotion in the writing, better lighting, which actually really matters.
Yep.
Better camera angles, and better production values. These small things that NASA could do all of this.
Yep, that's the easy stuff.
They don't.
Nope. Their broadcasts are very slow and very, very safe and very boring.
Yeah.
With beautiful shots of rockets.
Just improve the lighting.
Yep.
And
yeah, it's funny. Like but not even that. I mean, like SpaceX with really great visualizations about where the rocket is, with cameras on both the rocket, cameras on the descent, cameras set up to watch them land in the, like, to see every part of the mission come together like it's an action movie. That is wonderful. That's how you show people a rocket launch.
And we've seen NASA do this. What was it? 7 Minutes of Terror?
Yeah.
That was an amazing example where they took the time to explain to everyone, look, this might not work. We could very easily lose curiosity during this landing because this is a heavy expletive rover we're trying to put down there. And we have to do some scary expletive to get it onto the surface. And they did everything but actually swear in explaining this. And instead they just used very dramatic music.
Yeah, it was super good. They did a great job.
Yeah.
You need to decide whether you're going to swear or not, because you swore twice in this episode and now you just censored yourself twice. Like, just choose.
Sorry.
Because when you just say expletive, you're essentially swearing. So come
I
on.
know.
So just either swear or don't.
I'm
Get
trying
off
to
the
save
fence.
our.
Just choose. Just choose, because you're just saying it. You're just swearing up a
See, the
storm.
reality is, I swear like a
I
truck
know.
driver.
I know. So do I. But the trick is, I'm able to say words during a podcast and not use those words.
I know.
Just saying.
I know.
Just say, just pick one.
Yeah.
It's fine. We'll put the explicit lyric on our podcast, because you dropped it right in the middle of the episode. So we'll just
I didn't actually say I just said F.
no,
I
you
didn't say
you
the
said
rest.
the S word in the middle of our episode.
Oh, I
Yeah.
always forget that one's a swear.
Yeah. And so it's going to have to get bleeped out, or we're going to have to, we're going to get taken to court. There's going to be a whole thing.
That is not
We're
the
going to
case,
be
but
testifying in front of the government.
we have gotten angry letters from parents.
It's true, we have.
before.
And we've gotten them for you saying expletive. So all I'm saying is just
Okay.
be brave and just swear like the filthy talking sailor mouth lady that you are. We know
Okay.
you or don't. Or don't.
Choose.
Choose.
All
Just
right.
choose, but choose wisely. Pamela, it was a pleasure and an honor to record this podcast with you.
Same.
And of course, what's coming up next?
So the next thing that we're doing is I'm doing an experiment with David Joseph Wesley, one of our good friends that you did the Great Cassini video with. He and I on Sunday afternoon, early evening, are going to be making art together.
Right on.
He's going to be creating music while I create digital art of planets. And I did an image of a comet that I am stupidly proud of the other day.
Wonderful.
And so we're going to see what we're capable of creating. That will be Sunday. Time to be determined. Watch my Twitter. And we're getting into a really good rhythm over on twitch.tv/CosmoQuestX with our daily news show, The Daily Space. But for you guys out there listening right now, or heck, you're all watching on YouTube. Who am I kidding? We release it as a podcast. So check out The Daily Space in all the podcast directories you go to. It's a quick rundown of the news, and Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have guests.
Great. Sunday night, we're going to be doing a virtual star party on my YouTube channel. We're going to be live streaming terrible deep sky objects during the full moon, but also Corey Schmitz is going to be in South Africa, and he's going to be broadcasting Saturn, Jupiter, and the rest of the planets and the moon.
Cool.
So we're going to have a sort of a combo with me and Corey, and we'll be hanging out for a couple of hours and talking about space and
Can he
showing
see
off.
Comet Swan before it self-destructs?
Oh, I don't know.
'Cause
Maybe
Southern
we'll try.
Hemisphere.
We'll take a crack at it. So join us. We'll have an event on my YouTube channel, but it's going to be at 9 p.m. on Pacific time on Sunday. So come and join us. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Pamela. Thanks to the moderators. Thanks to everyone at the Weekly Space Hangout crew. We really appreciate you watching. Everyone on Twitch, thank you. And we'll see all of you next week.
Bye-bye.